All right. Hey there, welcome to SharkCast podcast dedicated to the greatest sporting club in the history of the world, the mighty Cronulla Sharks. This show is brought to you by Dyson Logistics, the Royal Motor Yacht Club in Port Hacking, and our good friend Jason Hawes at Crips and Crips Real Estate. I am Sam Shinazzi. I am an OG from 2015. I've been supporting this team for more than I can remember, which has been mostly glorious. Can't complain, especially since 2016. It's all been wonderful. On the other end of the line, a man who used to walk the halls of Cronulla Sharks Football Club. Now he walks the halls of another club that does some great work with the rugby league. Mr. Jardian Ormsby, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you for having me back, my friend. And speaking of walking the halls, we are coming to you from the bunkers of the KO HQ offices at the moment. So you may see some people from some of our NRL shows walking behind in the background. Can't guarantee it. Not sure that on a 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning that they'd be here, but you know what? You never know. You never know.
Braith, in all seriousness, does some long hours, so he might.
He might do,
and
And he literally, I don't know, people who are listening to this and not watching it won't be able to see this, but he will often sits right there, maybe 2 meters away from where this spot is located. So who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky.
Absolutely. All right, Jards, let's talk some Cronulla Sharks football coming off a wonderful win last week, 31-26 against the Melbourne Storm. We're sitting in 5th place, which is awesome. And just tell me your initial thoughts on the game. Give me some thoughts on how you felt at full time, and let's go from there.
Okay. I'll start with the top of mind thought. I thought the last 10 minutes has the potential to be a season defining and a season shaping 10 minutes.
Okay.
A lot of similarities in that game and in our grand final, or at least in that last 10 minutes, I would say. Going back to the Storm grand final in obviously 2016. So I thought that everything that happened before it, there was good, there was bad, there were some things that we did really well, there were some things that we probably need to look at and address. But that last 10 minutes, I thought, was a really good microcosm for the game and for potentially where we could be. And I thought they were brilliant. I thought they stood up defensively in that last 10 minutes and really kind of channeled the Sharks' defensive aura of olden times when we were just really gritty on the line. Didn't really give much away in the form of field position. I thought they attacked well when they did have the ball. And look, we'll probably get into some of the conversation around some of the antics, if that's the right word, that happened in the last part of the game. But I thought they stood up really well and really strongly. And I think there's been a few observations that I've seen from other people online and in obviously your recap straight after the game that I thought were pretty accurate. And I was pretty impressed with that last 10 minutes. And I think if they can build off the back of that, then we can go on and do almost anything in this competition. It's a pretty open competition. That was top of mind, Sam, in terms of what I remember the most from that game.
So we'll get into the number 5 real soon. But I think on the back of what you're hinting at, I haven't really talked about this too much in the last few days, but I think the backbone they showed is exactly my thoughts too, what you're talking about. Like later on in the year, it can come in really handy. And one of the criticisms from other people, not so much me, but other people, is the team over the past few years under Fitz hasn't shown that kind of inner toughness, that badass kind of thing, which you sometimes need, that edge, I guess. But now they're showing it. They've shown it most of the year in different sections. They showed it in Vegas against Penrith. They didn't get the win, but they showed it. And they certainly showed it against Melbourne, where they're just not going to be bullied. And you may not win the game, but the way they're showing that they're not going to be pushed around, I think is really impressive. Now, obviously, there's limits to what you want to do there, and we kind of crossed those but got away with it on the weekend. But I really love that about the Sharks, because everything they do is pretty good, right? Like the defensive line's pretty good. They can score points. Most of the guys are in pretty good form at the moment. But you need an edge. You need something else to take you to the next level. And we saw that in the weekend. And I'm not just referring to Ronaldo, in people's grill and that kind of thing. I'm talking just as a team, And we saw it against Manly at Brookvale as well. Like, you're not going to push us around. If you pick on our little fullback, we're going to pick on you no matter who, no matter who it is. And Ronaldo obviously is in the headlines. I got to say this, Judge, watching the replay back after being at the game, I thought the media attention was a tad overboard. I didn't think it was unwarranted. Like, it's definitely a talking point because obviously we're doing it now. But watching it on replay, I thought there were less controversial moments than I thought at the game. But let's talk about him. He's in great form for starters. Like, his form is fantastic. The way he's attacking that ball, he's shifting to center to do things with Kale on the left. Like, he's in great form. So that's why another reason why he can get away with it. The only thing I didn't really like was the standing over Coates second last incident. I didn't really care for. I don't like that kind of thing. But I know you got a few thoughts on Ronaldo and what happened. I'll open it up to you and we'll bounce off you.
I think my first thought when it happened was, I guess first thought was, yeesh, okay, this game should be over, but now there's an extra point that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That probably didn't need to happen there. That was my first thought. My second thought was, thank goodness Cam McInnes is our captain right now, because it's hard to see when you're watching this on broadcast, but if you're there at the game and you can see the wide lens on everything that's going on, his temperament is perfect for that moment. And the way that he communicates with referees is actually something that enables some of our players to, like Ronaldo, to maybe act the way they do, because like Cam McInnes has a phenomenal reputation amongst that referee group, and when he goes in, they know that they're going to get, a little bit of some cool heads coming in there, some cool attitude, and that's actually quite important. I don't know if Cam gets recognized enough for just being that person who can de-escalate things at that level. As for Ronnie himself, I had many thoughts about this after the game, because I probably go in a different direction with him than maybe some of the others do. I once had this experience where I played basketball with someone who was exactly like Ronnie, really, really good, but kind of came with, a little bit of swagger to him. And sometimes the swagger could override certain situations. And we had a coach whose job, he felt like his job was to maybe not coach that out of him, but to have him curb it. But you could see over time that as that was curbed, said player lost a little bit of edge about themselves. And so I think for Fitz, the challenge will be, how do you now coach Mulatalo in a way that allows him to be who he is? Because I think the worst thing that we could do with on the back of what's happened here is to remove the parts of his personal identity that makes him special. I think it would be poor judgment on our part if we were to basically say, "Hey, you're killing us out there. Stop doing all this stuff. Like, it's not worth it." If I had to choose, I had this conversation with with one of my siblings. If I had to choose between Ronnie as he is right now, or a tapered back version where he was like Teflon, where nothing stuck and he was perfect, but at the expense of his edge, I would take him as he is right now, 10 out of 10 times. I wouldn't change a thing about that. Yeah, I would want to have a talk to him and say, hey, like, there's a time for this, and that time is not the 79th minute of a game that is one score away from being an L. I wouldn't want that. I would want to have that conversation. But I thought that the playing group around him really stepped up in that moment. There were times when, so obviously the Pappenhausen thing happens, kind of collects him with an arm on that last play of the game, and Ronnie sees it on the big screen, gets pretty fired up. You've got Hamlin Uele around there. They're just grabbing him and like just pulling him back and saying, it's like, yes, but not now. And even in the actual forearm itself, like you can just see Will Kennedy and the others just diving on top of that, like protecting
Yeah.
their guy. That for me, like I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I will live with the uh the challenges that sometimes come with that. Now, granted, let's say Melbourne had scored on that last play, I probably would feel a little bit different about
Yeah.
that whole thing here, but it didn't happen, and you can only go with what's there, and you probably want to coach it out. But those were my thoughts on that. I wouldn't want him to change who he is in those moments for those things. I'd just wear it.
Yeah.
How
So
do you feel about it?
I agree, and I think it's obvious that he is a better player when he is emotionally involved. And the only thing I'd say about Fitz or the coaching staff talking to him would be, if you have the ball and you're attacking with the ball, like don't ever start anything. Like you don't want to give away a penalty in attack. Now I know there's not a lot of difference, because if Melbourne had the ball, they were 5 out, 2 minutes to go, you give away a penalty. I understand the difference, but I think that's one of the worst things you can do in football is if you've got the ball, you give away a penalty. We saw Fanua Blake do it a couple of times earlier in the year. He sort of stopped that. But so I guess be aware of game situation. So if there's a minute on the clock, don't do anything silly. If it's a 5-point game and they get a converted try, they win. Don't do anything silly. The other thing is, in that moment, Cam McInnes, and you can see it in the replay, Cam McInnes kind of lovingly hugs him, but forces him away head first and pushes him back. And he's sort of saying, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. But he's pushing him back away from the situation. And then Hamlin Welly, the big brother, comes in and is like, yeah, as you said, like, not now. What are you doing? The game's over. So the other thing which I pointed out, I think, with Kieran yesterday was, if Kieran, you, myself, bunch of the Sharks community are okay with him doing this and being this aggressive, then when we're in a grand final against Melbourne and the same thing happens and it doesn't go our way, I don't know how critical we can be. How do you feel about that statement?
I think it's fair. I think that's a fair statement. And for me personally, I'm ready to live with that. I'm ready to live with that reality where if it comes down to that and the exact same circumstance plays out the way it is, then I'm just going to have to rely on the group that's out there on the field with him to do exactly what they did on Saturday night, to just grab him and say, yes, but not now. And see how it goes there. Because I think I mentioned an example of other people, and there's just been so many examples of when people have tried to just bend one little thing about a player to make them a little bit better, but that one little thing ends up being the special thing that makes that player who and what they are. And I think this is one of those situations where this is his special thing. And if that special thing is sometimes going to put us in a situation where it's a little bit tricky, I'm going to live with that. And I'm going to have everyone in the team acknowledge that, yes, this is going to be sticky for a moment, but man, we're a much better team with him out there. And if that's the tax that we have to pay to have that player on the field, I'm going to pay that tax 10 times over.
Who else impressed you out there?
I gave my 3 points to Blake out there. I thought that game that he played was the game that I wanted to see him play. Like, he's played brilliantly for a while now, but that was an Origin-esque performance by him. I thought he controlled the ruck incredibly. I thought he put we're just a much better team when he's running the ball, and he really picked his runs really, really well. And I thought he got other people involved, and defensively, he's as reliable as ever. I was just super impressed, and I thought that he laid the foundation for us to be able to kind of move forward in that particular game. Obviously, it was really hard to split 3 points between him or Fanua Blake, who I also just thought was amazing, and everything that you pay for came out in that game. But I thought it was a good observation as well that when when Nelson was out there, and it was kind of like the Adam versus Nelson battle of these two big giants out there. When Adam was on and it was just him, we were in control of that game and of that momentum. But when he came
Yeah.
off and Nelson came on from Melbourne, I thought that we really lost that momentum. But when they were both on at the same time, I
Yeah.
thought Adam was the more impactful player of the two. And that's a hard like that's a hard thing to just the presence that he brings is hard to replicate in a forward pack. And I think that's becoming more and more evident there that we just look and move a lot better when he's out there. And one of the things that he does when he's out there is that he actually just creates this is very Fafita like as well from back in the day. His lines are just not repetitive. They're not always consistent. He will move in a different way depending on what he's been shown, and that
Yeah.
creates seeds of doubt in the defense. Like, okay, which way is he going to be going on this particular run? And I think that that element of his game is just so valuable to everyone out there. I thought he was super impressive. I was so glad for the decision to bring him in on the weekend.
So he played for 67 minutes.
Mm.
He had 22 runs for 215 meters, 3 tackle busts, 28 tackles. Now, don't forget we were down to a 2-man bench as well. So that's why it's also hard to replicate. But they are extraordinary stats.
Absolutely. I'm not sure that result goes the same way if he's not out there on the pitch, particularly when we were starting to lose our way there in the start of the second half for a little bit. Thought he um, was the antidote for a lot of that, and he's an infectious personality as well
Yeah.
in the what he brings to that pack. He's the type of person that if I see him running that ball, I'm going to run that ball exact same with the same level of assurance there. I thought he was brilliant.
If you watch full time, he goes around and shakes the referee and touch judges' hands as well. So he's quite the angel out there, which is very interesting. On Blake Brayley, he made, in inverted commas, only 32 tackles. So I think there's a key there. The less tackles, the more the runs. So I don't know how we do that, but
it's a great observation. I wasn't paying attention to his tackle count, but that makes a lot of sense at the same time too. And maybe that needs to be explored because if we can figure out a way to have him make 5 or 10 less tackles a game, but run the way that he ran, that's going to make a huge difference for us.
let's talk about Sifa Talakai and what a great club man he is. And just the genuine skill, like that guy. I still think he's underrated in the general world of rugby league. I know he played 1 rep game, but his skill is undeniable.
Absolutely. I thought when injury obviously forced that change out there, it was almost like year 1 of Fitz, right? When there was the Sifa at center experiment going on. And for the first few weeks of that experiment, teams didn't know what to do with him defensively. And there was a little bit of that there as well on the weekend. It was just probably not something that Melbourne had on their bingo card, was him being out there as long as he was and in that particular position that he was in. But I fully agree with you that there are some parts of his game that are hard to replicate for his size in the league. And with the ball, I think he's devastating as a runner. As long as he's not getting jammed up on quickly, which was kind of once people realize that if you could do that, then it really and takes his legs away from him, which was the most damaging part of his game. He's just quite a game breaker for us out there, and he plays on that edge where it's already pretty defensively sound as well. So some of the flaws that might be in his game, like I know it's his lateral movement might not be the same as his left to right might not be the same as other people that are playing in that position, but when you're playing, inside Ronnie or outside of Brit, like you're probably going to be, okay there.
Now, because we don't have you on a weekly basis, we don't know. Well, sorry, the general audience doesn't know some of your feelings. I know some of your feelings, but let's talk about two guys. We'll start with Nico Hines, who's been in really great form this year, and particularly the last couple of weeks. Where do you see Nico at?
I think he's in great form. I think he's playing a little bit more like the Nico we saw when he first arrived at the club. He's shed himself of. It feels as though when I'm watching him that he's shed himself of some of the weight that he was carrying around, whether that was media expectations or even the expectations of our fan base. He is
Yeah.
probably just getting a little bit closer to who he is, and I think that's coming through in his game. I've been super impressed with him recently. I will admit, like for me, and you know this, and probably a few others in in your orbit know this as well. But I can be a little bit critical of Nico sometimes, not publicly. Just I probably want to see a little bit more from our star marquee person in some of those bigger
Yeah.
moments out there. But like it's a minor gripe. He's playing fantastic. He's playing well, and he's the perfect person for this particular group, I would say.
What about Will Kennedy, who took a step back on the weekend, but still showed some really good signs in different moments? Where are you at with Will at this very present moment, and how do you feel about him moving forward?
I feel strong. I feel good about Will. Like it was a bad game for him. There's no getting around that. It was a
Mm,
terrible performance there. But the conditions weren't great for starters. So I'm not gonna. That's not an excuse, but sometimes if you're not all the way in the moment and 100% paying attention to what's going on, that ball can get super greasy out
yep.
there. Um, I think the offensive line looks better when he's involved in the attack, and he seems to be the glue that can get the best out of some of these people in the back line that are playing it in and around on the edge. He's often the person that is linking up in ways that kind of seem just natural to the players. Like some players naturally play better with other people that are the links, and I think Will is the link for that unlocks so many other parts of that back line. Um, in ways that will require me to sometimes forgive when he has some of the moments that he had on the weekend there. So I still feel pretty good about him, and for for what he's been paid, he's incredible value on the books.
Yep.
There, like he could very easily go and get a lot more money, I would say, than what he's currently on. But I do sometimes in these moments wonder if that down the line could be the difference between like your spine that fully clicks and goes all the way or not. At the start of this year, I was probably a little bit. I've always been on the Will Kennedy wagon from the early days. I really like him as a person. I think he's pretty admirable as a fullback as well. I think he does a good job. Um, but I'll sometimes look at those big game players and I'll look at the tape from an Edwards or a
Yep.
Pappenhausen or some of these other pieces that are around out there. These Pongers even. And sometimes I'm like, well, I wonder if maybe you just do need that kind of big, reputable name at the back that can clean up everything that you just don't have to worry about is going to get that ball. It was one of he gets compared a lot to Peach.
Yep.
And I think that's probably uh, not the right comparison for him. It's probably an unfair comparison. He's not
Yeah.
really that player.
No.
The he does like to play free, and when he is playing free, he's a lot better. But with Peach, you never had to worry about kind of that high ball. You just knew it was getting diffused. So I think that's kind of not a service to him that he gets talked about that way. But I'm still high on him. I still think you can win the premiership with him at
Yeah.
fullback there. And this is a game that you put in the rearview mirror, forget about it really quickly, and just remind yourself that you're in the Daily M race for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that he's the sort of player under the microscope with our fan base that any kind of incident and it's alarm bells. And again, we're not passing over what happened on the weekend. It wasn't great. You said terrible. I think it wasn't great. For me, the disturbing one was the second dropped bomb, which was pretty easy. I don't even know if it was a bomb, it was just a kick. The first one was really one of the harder kicks to get. I was okay with him leaving it, but the cleanup was horrendous, so no excuses there. But the next one, his confidence was down. The ball just came to him and he dropped it. I was like, that could be a problem. It stopped there, to be fair. I'm not going to be critical about the one later on, which was in the play the ball, because I thought that was just a clear-cut penalty. They didn't challenge it. The ref didn't get it. They let it go. I can't put that as an error against him. But you're right. Like, he's done so much good stuff this year. And after those errors, he did set up the try, which was the winning try in the end, and had beautiful hands for that try. So he found his feet again. He's very reliable under that high ball. That's why we're all a bit shocked. But I can tell you, like, the fan base is a little bit divided. Like, even where we were sitting on the weekend, where we usually sit, our good friend Mark, who tunes into the show, he was in a bit of a verbal with another Cronulla fan who I didn't know who that was, and they were verbally going for it because the other guy was really giving it to Will in a semi-aggressive kind of way, which is, it's fine. You pay your money, do whatever. But my friend Mark had a real problem with what he was saying, and I sort of got on Mark's side, of course, but I was like, this fella is being overly critical about, like, he wasn't being critical about the game. He's being critical about the player. And we're like, but he's been like man of the match in like 7 games or whatever. And like, he's dropped the ball. Okay, I get it, but just calm the hell down. So we're trying to calm the situation. But it sort of reminded me that a lot of people just don't think he's our guy. And even the opinionated fella, he blamed Will for the coach try where he jumped over Atkinson. And we were like, wait a second, you expect him to run all the way to the wing, push his winger out of the way and get the ball? And the guy's like, well, and then that's when we were like, okay, we can't argue with you because we understand what we're dealing with here. My point is, he still does raise just arguments and criticism, and is he the guy? Can you win the comp? Like, that whole thing, it hasn't gone away, and that was based on 2 errors, one which was costly. But 2 errors, and it's just like, nah, you're no good.
Yeah. I'd imagine as well, Sam, that it always feels like one error can feel like 10 errors when the team on the other side is the Melbourne Storm.
Yeah.
So I
again, I don't want to say they weren't important, because they were, but it's just, I need to be able to forgive a guy for an error.
Yeah, and if you're struggling to forgive a guy for an error, then just take a step back. I know it's hard in the moment. Like, we're not in the moment anymore. We're outside of the moment. So everyone can just take a step back. This person is 1 point behind the Daily M leader.
Yeah.
Will is having a phenomenal season across the board. And there are some games that I just am not sure that we win, if he's not doing what he's doing there. And also, go and have a talk to some of these people that are playing outside of Will. There is something special about him that is hard to see. Like, it'll never pass the eye test. You won't necessarily, or maybe it will. Some people, I've definitely been prone to being a bit of a body language doctor. But Will, not just in the play, but also as a human being, is a person that holds so many of those other things together that happens there. And I would encourage anyone who's struggling to see the value of him to go and talk to the players who are on either side of him. Like, they'll tell you exactly what they get out of Will on the field and off.
The other thing which you've raised is, you look at Pappenhausen, you look at Edwards, but I don't think there are 17 superstar fullbacks in the game. I don't think there's 17 of them available. Now, we've got a hooker who's in form, a halfback who's in form, a 5'8" who's finding some form after a little bit of not having form, and a fullback who's second in the Dally M leaderboard. But we've got a prop who's on a lot of money, who's killing it. At some point, you got to have a player who's on less money and isn't Ryan Pappenhausen. And okay, if you really believe that a fullback is the key to a premiership, I have no problem with that. But our team is going to have to be like cut up, divided, shipped off to Perth and PNG, and then start again, because that's not what's happening at Cronulla. Cronulla doesn't have the number one fullback in the game. They're putting their pieces elsewhere, and they think the fullback they have is pretty good. So that's the other argument I can't really understand is when, and I'm not referring to you, but when people go, he's just not Pappenhausen. It's like, well, no, he's not. But no one is. No one's Dylan Edwards. Like there's not 17 amazing fullbacks.
And I think, I nudged at it earlier in the conversation, Sam. If you're going to put the bulk of your money into your halves and into a forward or a couple of forwards, then you're going to have to give somewhere on the pitch. And this team has chosen that, they might give a little bit in the fullback role. And I don't mean to say that critically, because, again, what they get for the dollar out of Will Kennedy is so good. He's playing above the paycheck, as we would say in basketball terms. So I think I would go as far as to say that he's also an informed fullback that just had a bad game, and we kind of rush it off. And you know what? We'll deal with that, just like we'll deal with the running stuff when it comes up. For the most part, there's very little to complain about his season on the whole, and that's just not the opinion of a set of Sharks fans. It's the opinion of every person who's also giving these daily endpoints out as well.
Let's run through some stats of where we're standing right now, Jard. So we're top 5 for points scored, tries scored. We're making the second most run meters. Defensively, we are the second, I'm going to say second best team. We're conceding the second fewest tries and points behind the Bulldogs. And it's pretty close there as well. So second best defensive team. Conceding the fourth fewest line brace, 6th fewest missed tackles. The offloads that we all complain about, and we saw again on the weekend, we are conceding the 4th most. So there's some improvement there to be had. But that hopefully will come against a team like Melbourne, against a team like Canberra. There's going to be more offloads than, for example, against a team like Manly or even a Parramatta. So we need to improve on that, but it may not be as bad as we think. However, most of our tries do tend to come from broken play, conceding offloads as well, which I'll put into that category. So I'm not saying it's not a thing they need to work on. They definitely need to work on that. Completion rate, 4th best. We receive the most penalties, Jards. And conceding penalties were about halfway. So that's not too bad either. So there's a lot there to like. And there's not a lot of negativity if you believe in things like numbers.
And look, I guess if you're asking for who runs numbers and algorithms more than anyone else, like, betting partners are pretty good at running those numbers and shaping all of their odds for premiership titles off the back of those hundreds of algorithms that are running there. And we're third, irrespective of where we are on the ladder right now.
Is
if
that
you were
right?
to look at the odds, you've got Melbourne first at $3, and then the Bulldogs just behind them, and then right there
Wow,
above
I didn't
anyone
know
else
that.
is us. We're right there
That's
after the
great.
Bulldogs. So it's the Storm, the Bulldogs, and then there's us. And then there's actually like quite a gap to 4 and 5. So I would encourage people to just have a look at those numbers, not the betting numbers, obviously, just all numbers as a whole, and do an assessment on where we're at there. I think our ladder position is actually disingenuous to how good we are as a team. It's not reflective properly of that, and that's because, like you mentioned, our ability to handle broken play has actually cost us competition points. Like I think of that Canberra game many times after it, and just think, oh man, I hope that doesn't bite us in the bum come.
Yeah, and it might. There is no reason they should have lost that. And the West Tigers game, they really should have won as well on a bunch of different levels. So that is 4 points. I'm not going to include the Penrith game because they got us fair and square, and we were just behind them. Like maybe we were the better team. I don't know, but it was pretty close and they won. Fair enough. But the Canberra game, absolutely, and West Tigers game, I'll throw in there as well. So it's 4 points.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I was saying, I think to Kieran the other day, like it's going to be interesting that when it's the last round of the year or coming into it, and we're like, oh, we need 2 points to make a top 4, or we need 2 points to be the minor premiers or whatever. Oh, we lost 4 points in the first 5 rounds of the season. So, but there's always going to be those games. But it's a bit like people with the Will Kennedy thing. I probably can't let those games go, like in my head, because it's like, how'd you lose those? You know?
Yeah. And again, hopefully that doesn't come back to bite us in the butt a little bit later on. But they'll learn from them. I think the broken play thing needs to be addressed for sure. That is not a small thing. That is a recurring thing that I don't know what you do to address that. I don't know what drills people run these days. What forms of chaos you can simulate on a football pitch to.
Yeah. It is hard to simulate. You would have to do it against another team, and then obviously the instruction is offload, do whatever you have to do. But and I'm sure they do some drills, but in real game time against a big, huge human like the Canberra and Melbourne guys have, it's hard to replicate that. But they're just like, I think on the weekend against Melbourne, they were just in those moments a second off the play. It wasn't like they weren't going for it. Like the effort was there, but they were just a second behind. It's just like, come on. But they're aware of it, and their scramble is good. It's just, the tries that we tend to concede do come from there. So that is something. Hey, Jards, I know you weren't in the house on Saturday night, but Shark Stadium was rocking.
I definitely could hear it through the broadcast, and I had a few people call me from the actual game and asking where I was, firstly, but also you could feel and sense that was a big game. Like they spoke about this a couple of times on the commentary. There really is something there between these two teams, right? Like there is a genuine dislike there. Like there is a rivalry. It's a bit of a strange rivalry because we're so far away. The only thing we really share is like a grand final that we once played against each other. It's not like the historical Dragons or the Seagulls.
It's different. It's different to those two, Jards. It's different to those two clubs because you walk into those games and no matter what the form is or whatever, you're just like, oh, we don't like you guys. We're going to smash you, da-da-da. But with Melbourne, I think it's it's a respect thing because we don't really respect the Dragons. You don't really respect Manly. But with Melbourne, I think there's huge respect from the players and the club. And I think even though the fans won't admit it, I think a lot of the fans, not all of them, but people like me especially, I've got a huge respect for Melbourne. So it's kind of like you walk into the stadium and you're like, you're a bit trepidatious because you're not sure what's going to happen. Most of these games, like 9 out of 10 games, are going to be memorable. They're going to be epic, whether it's a huge win by one of the teams or a controversial thing or a sin bin, like something's going to happen. And there was definitely that vibe on the weekend. I think it was because both teams are in good form. I know Melbourne have dropped a few, but they're still the benchmark. And there is that elephant in the room every time this happens mid-year with the Sharks in the Fitzgibbon era. It's like, well, let's test ourselves. Where are we at? This is going to be a good test, Jards. If we lose, woo. If we win, let's go. And I understand those theories. I don't really buy into them, but I understand them. But there's all those things, and you walk in, and then Melbourne, they're holding down. They're playing up to the script. And thankfully, our boys really fired up. But, I mean, both teams got the crowd involved pretty early.
Yeah, they did. And look, I don't think people understand that the Melbourne, like most people do, but there are occasionally some people who won't understand that the Melbourne Storm are so good at this game. If you were to look at this, if you were to do the spine test, like if you knew you were waking up in the morning that you were playing against Harry Grant, Jerome Hughes, Cam Munster, and Ryan Pappenhausen, and that was the spine you were looking at, holy cow.
But then you got Coates, and you got
Coates out there,
a Sofa, and you've got the other big unit, and like it's ridiculous.
It's a great team.
Like they were stacked. Game, they were stacked.
And they're probably at the point where they're at the point that we want to get to, where they come into these games,
Yeah.
and for them, no individual game is ever a benchmark because they know who they are. Like,
Yeah.
they don't have to worry about, let's use this game as a statement to show the rest of the league how serious we are. They're above that. The Melbourne Storm are maybe one of two teams. I would actually say the Panthers might be, even though they're having a
Yeah.
pretty ordinary year. I'd say they're the other team that doesn't matter where we are on the ladder. Doesn't matter how we played last week. We know who we are, and there are no statement
Yeah.
games. We just play. I would love for our team to get to that point. I think you're right. That was a good chat. We do definitely still have these moments where we walk into a game and we say, like, this is where we make our statement, because we're
Yeah.
just a little inconsistent in that regard.
And
But it's
they made the
yeah.
statement. Like they got it across. You know, I know a lot of people who listen to the show and watch the show, they are very wary of how the club is spoken about in the media. Me personally, I don't really care anymore about that kind of stuff, but a lot of people do. And same with the Ronaldo stuff. People were sort of, you know, messaging us and sending us mail about, you know, everyone really doesn't like Ronaldo. And it's like, and you know, how you handle that yourself, I'm not going to tell you how to handle it. Me, I couldn't care less if my mate who goes for Manly thinks he's a moron. I couldn't care less. You know, he's our guy. How do we feel about him? Like, how do you feel about him? That's what's more important. How does, you know, Mick Ennis cover it on Fox? Well, okay, that's a big microphone he's got with a big audience, but at the end of the day, it's just one person's opinion. I'm just picking Mick out of a hat, but that's just one person's opinion. And it's the same with, you know, how the Sharks, like I personally don't really, I care a lot less about how the media thinks about the Sharks. You know, I heard the other day someone say, oh, last year they didn't really, you know, they failed at in the big moments. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we beat everyone except for Penrith mid-year, and then we lost to Melbourne, beat the Cowboys, and then almost beat the Panthers. Like, that wasn't a failure. It's just they didn't win. And so I think, you know, I think until we win a title under this current group, that's not going to change. You know, we could win every game now and then lose the prelim or lose the grand final in Golden Point, and people will go, oh, they choked. They can't handle the big moment. It's like, well, that's not exactly true. So I'm not concerned about that kind of image. But if you are concerned about that stuff, they held their end up pretty good on the weekend. Like, it was a big statement if you believe in those statements.
Yeah. One time this year, what are we in now? Round 11, round 12. One time this year, only one other time the Storm had conceded more than 30 points. To put 31 points on the Melbourne Storm is not easy to do. And it doesn't matter if you're the home team or if you're the away team. If you look through the schedule, that has been hard for people to do, whether they're playing at home or in Melbourne. To be able to do that is a great result. Great result.
They hadn't conceded that halftime total since
Right.
2003. So
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes our podcast has a bit of a rep for being a bit homerish, but they're clear-cut facts, right? Like, no one's done that since 2003. So that's when I think things are going okay, you know.
And I don't even think we played our best in that first half either. Like, it was a great result and we did well, but there were some things there that we could have done even better. Our completion rate was high, but it wasn't perfect. And like, we had more points in us, I thought, than just that. So for them to take the 2 points away from that particular game and to put that many points on Melbourne, the way that they did, everyone should be feeling pretty confident about, you know, what happened there.
What do you think happened in the first sort of 15 minutes of the second half? Like I know there was a couple of errors from Will, but just as a team, like I thought, oh, we might lose this just because of that opening kind of 15 minutes. Like, is it one of those things? What could you put it down to?
I don't know. Like, it was a strange one because it does all start with that dropped ball coming off the line, right, from Will, which, as you've pointed out, was the penalty that they would have won had they challenged that. But they didn't. And I think perhaps just like the broken play thing, it seems as though we score in droves, but we also concede in droves. as well. And
Interesting.
so there's a little bit of one of the things that the very, very good teams do is that they arrest momentum quickly when the other team has it. Like, and there's different ways you can do it. Like, I almost feel as though the Melbourne Storm way to do it, and maybe this isn't really observed because they seem to do it all the time, is you just you bring the ruck to your pace.
Yeah.
You dominate the ruck and you bring it to the speed that you want it to be in. And when you don't have momentum, the speed that you want is to just slow that thing right down. And not every team has that kind of second or third gear to be able to do that, or even are aware that that's what you need to do. But sometimes I think when momentum isn't with us, it will occasionally take a pretty big and special play for us to get it back. And sometimes, like, if it's not your day, it's just not your day, and you're not going to get it there. So I do worry about that. Is that when things are turning pear shaped, they tend to turn pear shaped in ways that we don't respond to quick enough.
Yeah.
And there'd be other games this season where it's exactly the same.
Were you happy with the way Fitz handled the wing situation? He was swapping wing sides for the players, and after the coach trial, I thought that was pretty cool.
I thought he did a really good job with that one, and played it about as well as you can. And I've actually been a person who I've not said this out loud, or maybe I have, but I'm not really sure that I love the utility on the bench.
Okay, yeah,
I'm a big fan of just loading up my bench with boppers and impact players from the
yep,
front or the second row. So for me, it's always been a little bit like, oh, okay, well, how long are we going to keep running Atco out there for? But in this particular game, it ended up being super helpful for
yeah.
us that he was there and that he was able to fill that role quite admirably after Stone Street went down. This is unfortunate for him that he's going to be on every highlight reel for the rest of the year. That Xavier Coates try was pretty special, but you know
He
what? At
posted
least he was there.
something on Instagram. It was something like "Happy with the win, great effort, boys," and it was then something like "Good on Coates for using me as a trampoline." I was like, he saw the humor in it. You know, he's a pretty laid back dude.
No, that's great, and um, I thought Fitz handled that whole situation quite well. Like, those are hard players to lose as well, and when you're losing players
Yeah,
from the same edge, like
yeah.
that's almost diabolical to happen there. And
It was
in Fitz
so. It
possession,
was. I don't know if it points out what a weirdo I am, but it was so exciting to see the switches happen live. It was like 2 or 3 times, and they're because it's 2 wingers, they're crossing over. It's not like a couple of guys you don't notice it. And Dan
yeah.
Atkins is like doing the wave, going, "Come on, they're switching, they're switching." And so they'd switch, we'd switch. And at first I was like, "What's going on?" And then I realized, and the boys were like, "Oh, this is going. You haven't seen this." I'm like, oh, "Okay." And then I just kept watching the wingers. So I wasn't watching the game really, and it was quite. Yeah, it was good to know that the coaching staff was on top of it, and the players also played a big role in that, in the communication. The communication was really good. And I think that's something that we should be positive about. Like the players at the moment that we've got, they always talk about the connection in all the media. How are things going? Da, da, da. You'll hear the word connect and connection. And so when you have that, you can do things like that pretty easily. And they come off. You can see that they can defend their line pretty good. There is a connection there. So pretty good times at the moment for us. You're only as good as your next game. We've got the Roosters coming up, and it's a tricky game because they're missing a bunch of players. And at the moment, we're only going to be missing a winger. So compared to last week, I mean, obviously other players missing, but at the moment we got Mawini coming in, which he's a very reliable player, as we know. And I believe the latest thing I've heard is that Jesse's going to be okay and he's going to play.
Okay.
So that's
Cool.
pretty cool. It was looking a bit dire there. So that's good news. There might be some more changes. We'll see what happens leading into the game up in Gosford. Before we let you go, Jards, I believe you attended a concert recently. Have we talked about this on the show?
We have not. I don't think I've been on since that concert, my friend. But yeah, I did.
Where did you go?
With the help of one Sam Shinazzi, who actually pointed me in the place that I needed to go to, because I have told people before, I love music, but not necessarily, like, I've not been to too many concerts in my life.
Yeah.
In fact, this broke a very long drought there. But I at the last minute on the whim decided to go to the Nelly concert at the Hordern Pavilion in Sydney, and
Yeah.
man, it just felt like my teenage life was coming back to me. And actually, the one thing I will remember in the build up to that, where I was a little bit on the fence of whether or not I should be going, or if I should just like do something else that night. I mean, Nelly's not for everyone. At this point, Nelly's more of a nostalgic act for a lot of people than he is a thing that you go to, like he's Taylor Swift or something. But the word that you use to describe the experience when you're there, or like what you could have, was that these things can sometimes be like spiritual like
Yes, that's
experiences,
right.
right? When you
Yeah.
go to these concerts
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you're in the throng and you're on the floor, that's what this can sometimes feel like. And that's exactly what it was.
Oh, good.
There,
Good.
for anyone who grew up in the Nelly era, it was like almost an eras concert where we had the Country
Right.
Grammar album, just basically all the hits on that on loop, and then a couple of others there. But um, it was a great outing. And if there's anyone there at Shark Park who is looking for a concert buddy in the hip hop world, then please let me know. I feel like now that I've ripped that seal off the
Yeah.
concert drought, I'm ready to go to anything and everything again.
Excellent. I want to give a shout out to our listener, Adam. And then I also caught up with OG Adam Newman and also
Nice.
Cam Webb last night. We were at a show
Nice.
by a band called the Lemonheads, who I love and adore. A little bit of nostalgia there as well, playing their two biggest records back to back and at the Enmore Theatre, jam packed. I can't believe how many people there. It was amazing. But we had a good time last night, so that was good. Bunch of Sharks fans in the house. And we're going to let you go, Jarge. You're a busy man with a busy day ahead of you, but we appreciate your time as always. We will do some more episodes for everyone, including getting through their mail and a few other surprises coming up this week. So until we talk to you again, Jarge, I can tell you right now that the Timberwolves are winning by 2.
Oh, are they really? Wow.
Towards the end of the first quarter, so it's only early days. And that's game 1 of the conference finals. And obviously by the time everyone hears this and sees this, then maybe it'll be there will definitely be a full-time result, and we'll see what team wins depending on who you go for. I know Josh Bolling is a Timberwolves guy, which was only recently revealed to me. So, and I believe
Great.
Big Tuku might be as well, because Tuku's been posting about the Timberwolves. So, now
I mean,
you're a
Edwards is pretty
baller.
special.
Yeah, you're
Anthony
a
Edwards
baller,
is
and
a great reason to go for
you
it.
know
I'm
that team is not always that
great.
city, that state is not always successful on fields and sporting arenas. So
No, they are not. I'm sorry, my friend, for the football side of that and for what that means to you. But they can be a bit tricky.
yeah.
Actually, one thing I can say, for the
Yeah.
benefit of any of those people, SharkCast listeners who have gotten to this part of
Yes.
the
Which
pod,
many do. Yeah.
which many do. If you are a person who likes your basketball, but also your rugby league in particular, which is why we're all here, right?
Mhm.
We are on the verge of releasing the brand new KO experience, and I would
Okay.
be willing to give anyone on your podcast a preview
Mhm.
into what that looks like, by
Okay.
having them join us on a beta journey. So, if you're a KO subscriber, which is my world at the moment, and you're interested
Yeah.
in understanding what the future of KO is going to look like,
Yeah.
we'll figure out a way to get you in touch, and I'll get access to some people, maybe the first 10 people that go there, because we are not far away from launching our new version, and it will be very different there, and the way that people will be watching Sharks games pretty soon will be different, and I'd love people to be able to get a look at
Okay.
that and
That's
give
awesome.
us
So
some
maybe
thought.
people get in touch with us and then we'll pass it on to you. Is that the best way?
Yep, that's the best way. Get in
All
touch,
right.
and
All right.
I'll reach out, and we'll give you some access to that.
What about that? What about that, Sharkcasters? There's a scoop I didn't see coming. Jard's coming through with the goods. Thanks for your time, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. Hope you're well. Hope your family's well. And everyone else, enjoy your time until we speak to you again, which will be soon. So stay tuned. SharkCast Pod. We appreciate everything and all that you do till we speak to you again. Up, Cronulla. Let's go.